Tonight, a dramatic standoff is unfolding on the world stage, and the stakes could not be higher. The latest round of peace talks aimed at ending the war in Ukraine has collapsed in London, and at the center of the storm are two leaders, Donald Trump and Volodymyr Zelensky, locked in a war of words over the fate of Crimea. U.S. President Donald Trump has come out swinging, directly blaming Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky for what he calls the derailing of a peace plan that, in Trump's view, was just within reach. Trump's message is blunt. Zelensky's refusal to accept Russia as control over Crimea is, in his words, prolonging the killing field and standing in the way of a ceasefire that could save thousands of lives.
How?
In a lengthy post on social media, Trump accused Zelensky of making inflammatory statements and insisted that the loss of Crimea was a reality. Ukraine needed to accept if it wanted peace, but President Zelensky is standing firm. For him, Crimea is not up for negotiation. At a press conference in Kyiv, Zelensky declared, "There is nothing to talk about. This violates our constitution. This is our territory, the territory of the people of Ukraine." He has repeatedly rejected any suggestion that Ukraine should give up its claim to Crimea, which Russia annexed in 2014. For Zelensky, conceding Crimea would not only be unconstitutional, it would be a betrayal of the Ukrainian people. The London talks, which many hoped would mark a turning point in the conflict, have now fallen apart. Key U.S. officials, including Secretary of State Marco Rubio and Special Envoy Steve Witkoff, abruptly withdrew from the negotiations, leaving European allies scrambling to salvage the process. The American proposal on the table was a so-called land for peace deal. Ukraine would recognize Russia's annexation of Crimea, and in return, the West would work toward lifting sanctions on Moscow. Both Kyiv and Moscow rejected the terms, and the talks quickly unraveled. The fallout has been immediate and severe. Trump, frustrated by the lack of progress, has paused military aid to Ukraine, including intelligence support, following a heated Oval Office exchange with Zelensky earlier this year. The two leaders reportedly clashed in a near-shouting match, with Trump accusing Zelensky of gambling with World War III and being disrespectful to the United States. U.S. assistance only resumed after Kyiv agreed to a partial ceasefire and made economic concessions. But the relationship between the two presidents remains frosty. Meanwhile, European leaders, including representatives from the UK, Germany, and France, continue to back Ukraine's position. After the London meeting, Ukrainian Presidential Chief of Staff Andriy Yermak emphasized that an immediate, complete, and unconditional ceasefire must be the first step toward a just and lasting peace. Zelensky echoed this sentiment on social media, noting that while emotions ran high, all sides contributed meaningfully to the discussion, and that joint work is the only path to lasting peace. But the issue of Crimea remains the ultimate stumbling block. Trump has argued that it is far better to allow Russia to still occupy the peninsula than the alternative, warning that Ukraine faces a dire choice: accept peace on these terms or risk losing even more. He can have peace, or he can fight for another 3 years before losing the whole country, Trump wrote. He insists that his only goal is to save lives, but critics say his approach would force Ukraine to accept a frozen conflict and reward Russian aggression. Kremlin spokesperson Dmitry Peskov, for his part, has said that Russia does not consider it appropriate to set deadlines for a ceasefire, and that talks to restore Us-Russian relations and a settlement in Ukraine are two completely different issues. As the diplomatic deadlock drags on, the human cost continues to mount. Just this week, a Russian drone strike on a bus in Ukraine's Dnipro region killed at least 9 people and injured dozens more. The violence shows no sign of abating, and the prospect of a breakthrough seems more distant than ever. So what happens next? Will Ukraine be forced to accept the loss of Crimea for the promise of peace? Or will Zelensky's defiance inspire a new path forward even as the war grinds on? The world is watching, and the outcome of these talks could shape the future of Europe for years to come. If you believe in the right of nations to decide their own fate, now is the time to make your voice heard. Share this story, join the conversation, and let your leaders know where you stand. The future of Ukraine and the principles of international law hang in the balance. Stay with us for continuing coverage of this critical story. Don't forget to subscribe, leave your thoughts in the comments, and be part of the global dialogue. Your voice matters now more than ever. Until next time, stay safe.